Good morning and welcome to Legally Speaking with Attorney Antoinette Osbourne. This program is for information purposes only. If you need legal advice, you can contact me, Antoinette Osbourne, at 718-502-9137. That's 718-502-9137. The office focuses on divorce, immigration, bankruptcy, real estate, and estate matters. We also do eviction proceedings. There is a second office in Jamaica, West Indies, if you are seeking to buy or sell property, or if you're looking to wrap up an estate. This morning, I wanted to focus on misrepresentation within an immigration context and how that will subsequently affect you in later proceedings. All right, so I wanted to also remind you that we are going on air on Future FM 98.9 on your dial, or if you are not able to pick it up on the radio, and generally it is going to be Bronx and Westchester people who can. If not, I have posted the link in the chat where you are able to tune in and listen in on the TuneIn app, or you can go to their website, futurefm.net. And at 11, we'll be having our community-based program, which is Fumi's Village. All right, so I wanted to focus on misrepresentation. And if it is that you do have a question this morning, you can call in at 718-502-9137. That's 718-502-9137. So let's look at the applicants who are coming in on their non-immigrant visa, and there is possibly a second intent that they have, which of course is not going to be disclosed to the officer who is at the airport or whichever port of entry that they are actually entering on. So how it is that the immigration is able to establish that your intention is completely different from what you in fact represented. And how they are able to do this is they do this by their action. Now, whatever acts that you do get involved with, and I'll show you how it is that they knew that when you came into the country, what you stated is completely contradictory to your visa. Most people enter in on a B1, B2 visitor's visa. So they enter and it's mainly for business or pleasure purposes. However, your actions will indicate to immigration whether or not that was your true purpose. And how they are able to determine this is what actions have you taken? For example, if you enter on the visa and you in fact start working, so you're working without authorization. So that indicates to them that, look, this person's true intent wasn't just come to visit as proposed when they went and they applied for the visa. So working without authorization indicates that what you really should have entered the country on was a work visa. So this morning we're just getting into how it is that immigration is able to hone down on your misrepresentation. And this really is done by the actions you have taken. So entering on a visitor's visa and you go ahead and you start working, that clearly indicates that your main purpose was not just for visiting for pleasure or looking to take certain actions for the benefit of your business. And we're focusing on what is referred to as what actions have you taken within the first 90 days. So we're looking at the 90-day rule. Prior to the Trump administration, it was the 60-90-day rule. However, once the Trump administration came in, that time period was extended to 90 days. What actions have you taken within the first 90 days of arriving in the United States, which would be contradictory to your visa application? So you're coming in, let's say, on a visitor's visa, you're going ahead, you're working, or within the first 90 days, you are in fact applying to school. So good morning, Madge. Good morning, Renee. Good morning, Michelle. Good morning, Sunshine. So focus will be on what actions have you taken within the first 90 days. Morning, Steffi. All right, let's look at, you're just coming in and you're saying you're coming for a visit. And you are coming to visit, let's say, your aunt. However, within that first 90-day period, you go ahead and you get married. This clearly indicates that you have lied, right? When you had the opportunity at the time when you entered to let the officer know at immigration, at your port of entry, that you're coming for a marriage. But then, by you saying this, there is a strong possibility that you would have been denied entry, where the person you're marrying is a US citizen. So by you failing to disclose this and you get married within the first 90 days and then you adjust in the United States, that clearly indicates that you have materially misrepresented the purpose of your visit. And this is how they are able to determine misrepresentation within the first 90 days. Good morning, Christopher. Good morning, Trevor. So by your very actions, you are able to reveal the true intent of your visit. And this is why when people put in applications, whether it is for a change of status, an adjustment of status, they will ask you on the forms whether or not you have worked. If you go ahead and you reveal your work history that you are working in the United States, that is in fact a violation of your status, and any change of status application will get denied. So once this is revealed to them, then here it is, you have an issue, right? Another thing is, if as you come in within the first 90 days, you are looking for an extension of status or a change of status. So for anyone who is looking to change the purpose of their stay, it's advisable that you make this application outside the 90-day period. Within the 90 days, it clearly indicates that what you represented, you are in fact coming in for a purpose other than what was stated on your visa application, or in fact what was stated to the consular officer and the Department of State when you're entering with immigration with DHS, right? All right, so the good thing is after 90 days, this presumption does not arise. And that is why the focus is on what was your intention within the first 90 days. Of course, no one can read your mind. So this is in fact disclosed by your actions. What it is that you have done within the first 90 days that indicates that your true intention is not what you had stated when you applied for the visa or when you entered at a port of entry. One of the things that you have to focus on with misrepresentation, so we're going past that 90 days and we're looking at the actual application. people are applying and they will be seeking their extensions of stays or their adjustment of status or their change of status. So now we are in fact focusing on let's look at your adjustment of status, right? And one of the things that they look at is, what was your answer to the question when asked, has anyone ever petitioned for you before? Now, generally, immigration has their own mechanism where they are able often by your biographic information, to check whether or not you have submitted an application before. And what they do is there's a cross reference: date of birth, parents' names, marital history, work history, address history. This allows them to verify whether or not this is you. A clear identifying factor is your fingerprints. Once you go ahead and you do your fingerprints, these fingerprints are not just to ascertain your criminal history or to see whether or not there has been, your name comes up once an FBI check is done on you. One of the things that the fingerprints allows as well is to determine whether or not you have made a prior application. And the reason your prior applications are so important is that it allows them to see the inconsistencies in your application. So for anyone who is in fact making an application to immigration, I am going to tell you to refer to prior applications that you have done. It's so important. We do not want to be inconsistent with our application. Oftentimes, you will remember the truth, but I can guarantee you this: 99% you're not going to remember a lie. Have your prior applications when filling out your current applications. Check for any inconsistencies. Check to see whether or not there has been a misrepresentation that you know you are going to need to clarify in your interview, right? So this is where whatever statements you have made on prior applications are so important, because it governs the outcome of your future applications. I've had clients where they have submitted previously on marriages and prior application, and they've never been married. And oftentimes you will see this where people go to document preparers or who are deemed paralegals or possibly notarios who have filled out applications for them. And this is the difficulty. People are signing applications, they're signing applications in blank. For you to say that you did not know what was in the application, that's no excuse. And oftentimes when you see a scheme where someone has a link, and I have had a gentleman recently come to my office, and he stated that there was a woman who was filling out these applications. They were not allowed to basically get copies of the applications, and this should be a red flag to you. If someone is making an application on your behalf, as an attorney, our clients are entitled to copies of their files. So if someone is making an application on your behalf and they are in fact not giving you copies of the application, this should be such a red flag to you. And I want you to understand, once you place your signature on a document, you can't say it's not your act. You crying to say that you never reviewed it, that's no excuse, right? Let's focus on kids. Where you're a minor, of course, you don't know what your parents are doing on your behalf. So if it is that your parents are submitting an application, because it is deemed really a minor, that you're possibly under 16, even though legally a minor is under 18 in New York. The problem is, if an application is done by your parent, that really doesn't become a problem for you as a minor. It becomes a problem when you are an adult. And a lot of grace is given to minors when it comes to immigration. And the reason being is it is deemed that they really do not know what actions are being made on their behalf. And you'll see cases where there are false marriages, fraudulent marriages done by the parents. And an application is placed with immigration for the child. The marriage is deemed fraudulent after an investigation, and this, because of the 204C bar, permanently blocks the parent. However, the fraud that was committed by the parent does not block the child. So this is where, as a child, you are protected. And there's something I want to draw your attention to. If you get a letter where you went to an interview and there were discrepancies in your response between you and your spouse, and oftentimes this occurs after a Stokes interview. So there is a discrepancy and your case gets denied because of the inconsistencies. The officer does not believe it's a good faith marriage. This is completely different from where a fraud marriage determination making you subject to the 204C bar is held, right? So you will find that people have engaged in marriages where with their prior spouse, there's a discrepancy in the answers. Oftentimes, and where it's really a red flag is where you're not familiar with the person's date of birth, core answers, date of marriage you don't know, where in fact you did where you had a reception, where you had your honeymoon. I've had a client come to me where, unfortunately, pictures were taken of the honeymoon. When the officer asked the wife, where is this picture taken? The woman did not know. So he was referred to my office after that disastrous interview. And I said, it looks ridiculous. You're on your honeymoon. How is it that you don't know where the pictures were taken? And this is why I encourage people, prepare for your interview. Certain basic things should not be hard, right? It would have been different if you're going to 5 different places during the honeymoon, but you're staying at one hotel during your honeymoon period. How is it you do not know where the picture was taken? And it's taken at that hotel you're staying at. All right. If your employer is submitting an application on your behalf and your employer commits fraud, that fraud is not attributed to you, right? So the fraud of the employer is not attributed to you, unless of course you participated in the fraud, but then they would have to prove that, right? What are they looking at? They're looking at outright lies. So you're making an application and you are in fact committing perjury because you're lying on the application or you're lying on your testimony, right? They want to ensure that the statement that you're making is in fact a misrepresentation. But what is important is this misrepresentation in your applications must be material. If it is that the misrepresentation is not material, then it cannot really be held against you, right? So your misrepresentation must go to the core of your application. And had the officer known the truth, it would probably bar you from getting a green card or the benefit that you are seeking. All right. I'll show you things that like will cut off a line of inquiry when you fail to disclose kids. And often you will find parents who cannot file for their children. And I'll tell anyone this: if it is that your spouse is making an application for you and you had children from your home country, there is no real reason why you would fail to disclose these kids, unless what will happen is possibly you are married and you're not divorced, so you just don't disclose the kids at all. Another reason people may fail to disclose the kids, they were probably living in a country where, other than their home country, that they committed a crime. And if they disclosed the child, then it would indicate that they were living in that country. And in order to protect themselves, they don't disclose because they don't want immigration to go and investigate and find that criminal history. So there are some reasons why people will lie and they'll fail to disclose their children. Another reason is newly born children. So children who were born immediately prior to you applying with somebody else, or children who were born after the application but before your interview and you fail to disclose, that cuts off a line of inquiry by the officer who would have been able to determine that possibly your marriage is not a bona fide marriage and you are using this person for immigration purposes. Yeah? So if you're just tuning in, welcome. You are listening to Legally Speaking with attorney Antoinette Osbourne. For those of you who will be listening in at 11 o'clock, there's no YouTube live. It is a community-based program, and you're more than welcome to join us on Fumi's Village, where we focus on social commentary affecting our community because we are really in a state of turmoil. So the main focus of Fumi's Village will be on family. I'm a family-oriented person, so if you are not, that show will just not be for you. So the main focus is what can we do so we can still maintain our family unit. We want families to stay together, want to give the kids a stable environment to be living in. We want people who are in marriages to keep their marriage. We want to be better individuals, wholesome, not just for our family, but for our community as a whole, right? So at 11 o'clock, you are more than welcome. If you are in Bronx or you are in Westchester, you can listen in on Future FM 98.9. If you are not in these areas, I have pinned the link where you are able to join in online, futurefm.net, or if you have the TuneIn app, you can listen in at 11 o'clock. All right, let's look at the material misreps, some of them that will just require you to submit a waiver. And a waiver application is not the easiest application. It requires showing extreme hardship to your spouse. Nobody cares about the immigrant. In this application, the focus is on the U.S. citizen spouse or the green card holder spouse, the US citizen parent, or the green card holder parent. So if it is that you can avoid making these misrepresentations, so you absolutely do not have to file a waiver, I am going to encourage you, keep on the right hand side when you are filling out these applications, when you are in fact giving your testimony, because these waiver applications, you have to show extreme hardship to that relative, right? If they had to remain in the United States without you, or if they had to relocate with you to your home country. That application is not a 1, 2, 3 application. It's a very intense application, and where you have an officer that is extremely thorough. If you cannot make out your case, your waiver gets denied and your green card application consequentially gets denied. So this is why I'm encouraging you to avoid these misrepresentations. They have dire consequences for your applications with immigration, right? All right. For people who have been arrested and you lie, the fact that your arrest has been expunged, this does not mean, and even I'll tell you this, for my clients where they're outside the country, because people will expunge their criminal history in Jamaica, and because they've expunged it, they think they don't have to reveal it. But as an attorney, I'm an officer of the court. So the fact that you have expunged it is not an acquittal. It means it did not happen, and I have an obligation to reveal it. And my clients reveal it, regardless that it's expunged. I get them to get their disposition. If it is that it's an arrest or a conviction that makes them inadmissible and I can't get a waiver, then I'm not going to take that case. It does not make sense for people to spend money, and it's outrightly clear that they are going to get denied. And when you're filling out these applications, and I think this is a basic question now because of the world we are living in, when you're dating someone, you must ask them, you must find out their criminal history. It's very important, especially where immigration is involved and it's going to permanently block them from migrating. I don't think no one is going into a relationship to permanently do long distance. This is not something I would recommend. I don't know how people intend to build a relationship permanently on long distance, unless you're like a second wife, right? Or you're probably just married on paper, but the person have their main person. I don't see how people build those relationships, but then it's not for me to judge. People live their life how they want to live their life. But I don't think long distance in a permanent setting is going to enhance your relationship. I don't see how you're going to grow in your relationship doing long distance permanently. My take, you have to be like the second spouse. You're not the main person. So whether you are in the home or not is irrelevant, because they have their main person outside on the road, right? That's just my take. But who am I? I saw my parents in one home, right? It is what it is. If you are arrested and you admit the arrest and you lie about the outcome, that doesn't help you, because you're required to supply a disposition. Your disposition must, in fact, be certified, right? So you going ahead and lying, this doesn't help you, right? So just tuning in, welcome, good morning, Amarildo. Welcome to Legally Speaking with attorney Antoinette Osbourne. If you have a question, you are more than welcome to post it in the live. You can also call in into the live, or you can text your question. I will in fact be able to see it. You have to be so careful with these applications. A simple mistake, I've seen clients come to me after their cases get denied because of simple mistakes. Simple mistakes which would not have had any disastrous effect on their application. And this is where I encourage you to stay away from the village, where I warn you about the village lawyer. Yeah. Let the village kind of, especially at 11 o'clock, give an intake concerning family life. But when you need legal advice, you need to go to a trained attorney. It does not benefit you by taking advice that is going to harm you, right? All right, so just a reminder for those of you who are just joining, at 11 o'clock, we are going to be on Future FM. It's not a legal program. It is a social commentary sort of program, and we're focusing on maintaining that family unit. So at 11 o'clock, you can join us on Fumi's Village on Future FM 98.9 FM if you are in the Bronx or Westchester, or you can in fact tune in on the TuneIn app or go directly to their website, futurefm.net. All right, so how do you save yourself when you do these misrepresentations? Because we're trying to avoid submitting a waiver, right? One, it's expensive. I see no waivers really by the time you finish spending all your expenses coming in under $8,000. I don't see it. Yeah. So Amarilla is asking, how do I get my tenant out and they don't have a lease? So if your tenant does not have a lease, you should do a holdover proceeding, as the main focus will be on possession, and as the owner you're entitled to get back your place by, depending on the time period that they are in fact in the residence. And under a year, you have to serve like a 30-day notice. Over a year, but less than 2 years, is a 60-day notice. And anything over 90 days is over 2 years, you serve a 90-day notice. Yeah. I had one of my clients come to me the other day and she was like, she's getting some tenants. And at this point, she's taking private people. She's not, in fact, taking someone from a program, because these are the people she's considering. And I told her, don't give them a lease. Do not give them a lease. I specifically, you need to watch people. We're living in a different age right now. And if you don't have to give a lease, I'm sorry, don't do it. When you have bad tenants and you are stuck in a lease, you're basically looking for the lease to run out before you can outrightly just do a holdover. Yeah, so if you want to give a lease, I say watch that tenant for a year, even though people can change. But watch a tenant for a year, watch how they pay, watch how they take care of your place. Yeah, because we have to be realistic. We have people who are taking advantage now. And New York does not have the best landlord and tenant court system for landlords. You truly suffer. Yeah, this is not the South. And oftentimes, just even to get a date, I remember it took me, after filing, I think Brooklyn, one of the worst counties, to get a date. It took like nearly 5 months just to get a date. And this is after giving a 90-day notice. And this is why in the eviction proceedings, it will really take a long time for you to get rid of a tenant. All right, so someone says, good morning, Miss Osbourne. I'm engaged to be married to an American citizen. He has was and served time for involuntary manslaughter. Unfortunately, his child drowned in the bathtub. Can he petition for me and my children living in Jamaica? All right, so this borders really on the Adam Walsh Act, where certain crimes which were committed against children. It's such an uphill battle when you are stuck with the consequences of where they have determined that your petitioner is barred by the Adam Walsh Act. And I do believe manslaughter, I'm not sure, I'd have to look, but oftentimes it has been like crimes involving sexual offenses for children, neglect with kids, things that would put children in danger, that would cause that petition to be subject to the Adam Walsh bar. I believe I'd have to take a look, but I believe that would, because it depends on the child. And when I say child, if that child is drowning in the bathtub, I would anticipate that child is truly a minor and could not have taken care of themselves. So I would have to check, but I do believe that would be on the list. And if he cannot overcome that bar, then that petition will never be approved. So I'd have to look for that. But I do believe manslaughter, the circumstances, the child drowning, possibly. This Adam Walsh bar came to protect immigrants as a result of what happened to Mr. Walsh. And everybody, I'm sure, is very familiar with that show. I'm not even sure if it still comes on now, but it's a show where I used to watch when I used to live in Jamaica, America's Most Wanted. And his wife had gone to Macy's. And this is the thing with kids. Children are such that you constantly have to watch them. And sometimes I observe parents who are on the road with their children. The children are either way behind them or far ahead of them. But what happened to that man's child was the mom took the child to Macy's and someone snatched that child out of that department store. And 2 weeks later, I think either his head or the rest of his body was found on the highway. And this is why you just have to be careful with your children. So they wanted to protect immigrants who were coming in, and you had children who were caused serious harm by these adults to prevent them from allowing, unless they can overcome that bar, to be prevented from being in a household with basically what is deemed to be a monster. Yeah. So I'll have to look into that for you, but I think just by the nature of the crime and the factual circumstances of that neglect, yeah, there are certain factors that they will look at to see whether or not you can overcome that bar. But when you get hit with that petition is hard to get approved. I think it's like what, 5-10%? Stop. All right. Let's look at withdrawing your statement, right? Because you need to be able to withdraw that misrepresentation in a timely manner so it's not used against you. So often when you come into the interview and the officer will ask you a question, and oftentimes when you see them repeating the question, it's because something was found against you, right? And it came to their attention. This is a time where you should try and retract it immediately. Most officers, however, will ask for a waiver, right? But I know that for me, if it is that, and I'll tell you how this happens. And this is where some days I'm just amazed. I've had clients where we go through the application. Prior to the interview, we have a conference. But it's not until we're walking towards the officer they remember these things. Oh, I dreamt last night. It came to me in a dream. You know, I was arrested. I totally forgot. But it happens. You know, it is what it is. Things like that, I'll immediately go in and I'll say, look, there's an error on the application. And then the officer will say, I'm going to question them, let them give their testimony during the proceedings, and we'll take it from there. Now, one common thing that I find with these applications is a misrepresentation that happens a lot. And it is children who are, in fact, single at the time when their parents father them. During the proceedings, because this whole thing takes so long, during the proceedings, they get married. And now it is the interview comes and they fail to reveal their marriage, which would have caused them to get a number where the prior to date is probably an additional, I would say, 7 years. And because of this, they don't want to wait the 7 years. So they're going to go in and they're just going to lie. This misrepresentation has serious consequences. Yeah? All right. Let's look at fake passports. People who enter on fake passports. This is still an admission where you can adjust status. It does not prevent you from adjusting. The only thing is, because of the misrepresentation, you're going to need a waiver, right? So you could have come in on a fake passport, or you could have come in on a legitimate passport, but it's someone else's passport and visa. You can still adjust. What will, however, prevent you is if that passport is a US passport. So just be very careful of entering on US passports, especially after September 30th, 1996. It is a false claim to US citizenship, and it permanently blocks you from getting a green card. So watch how it is that your friends, they know of your situation, they're trying to help out, they don't understand the consequences of this. They're giving you this passport that you can probably fly down to go outside the country because your relative is sick and you don't have no papers. Your girlfriend looks like you, she sees that your mother is dying and she knows you want to go. So guess what? She gives you her passport, you know her information. There's no problem when you take that passport and you leave the country, right? The issue is when you are coming back and the officer picks up on this. But just by the mere use of that passport, whether it's leaving or coming, if it is discovered, you're permanently blocked from getting that green card. And now even the adjustment forms have been changed, where they have in fact asked you, have you ever falsely claimed to be a US citizen? Yeah? The reason they're asking this, if that officer sees a check on that box that says yes, he knows he's going to deny that application. Be careful, and just, especially in filling out your applications, be extremely diligent. But I think that's such a harsh consequence. But when the IRR Act came out in 1996, they weren't playing. And here we had the aggravated felonies and the permanent bars to certain things. And it's sad because you'd have people here for years. I'll never forget my client, fireman for years. How you get that job? Immediately to me, that's a red flag. So imagine them. Because guess what? These jobs are such, oftentimes you have to be a US citizen. So after contributing for like, I think 25 to 30 years in the system, he wants his social security. But you're not gonna get a dollar. And that's a harsh consequence with you contributing to a system. And when it's time to reap the reward for social security, you're not going to get a dollar because you have no status. Yeah? I've had clients come to the office, they've been deported, paid their taxes all these years, and does not have they don't have the ability to show that legal status to get that social security. And I'll tell anyone this: when you become a senior citizen, every dollar counts. And if you've been deported back to a country where especially you don't have that will to work, and oftentimes in a third world country, you have to work real hard to get that money. A dollar is not, your relatives probably don't have it. A dollar is not easy to make, and you've lost all your benefits from Social Security just because you don't have legal status to show. And for anyone who is working on a tax ID, I am going to encourage you, when you do get your papers, go to Social Security Administration, present the tax ID, right? Having presented the tax ID, all those credits that is attached to your contribution over the years will be placed on your Social Security number, so you don't lose it, right? So anyone who has worked on a tax ID, contributed to the system, go right ahead. And once you get your Social Security number, transfer those credits from your tax ID onto your Social Security number so you can benefit. Because oftentimes people do not get their papers overnight. And where it is that you have worked for a substantial amount of years on that tax ID, you can make up those 10 quarters, right? So that you can, and oftentimes 10 quarters will work out to like 10 years. Oftentimes you can use those funds and put towards your credit. So when you do reach that age to collect Social Security, you're in fact getting that monies, right? All right. It's not me, or I did not know, or it was not translated. That's not going to protect you once your signature is on the document. Most important question is that your signature? Once you have ID'd your signature, that's the end of it. No one cares that you didn't speak English and the form was not translated. Government is going to push the burden on you that you had the responsibility to get the document translated. So therefore the fault lies on you. No one cares that you didn't review the documents. It was a document preparer. These people had some sort of scheme going on. They just made you sign the documents. That's not going to avail you. It is not going to save you. That document is going to be attached to you. And if there is misrepresentation, you are going to need a waiver. It's not an excuse to say I signed the documents in blank, or I did not review it before I signed it. Only thing that could save you is if it's not the signature. And sometimes maybe not. All right. You have a duty to read. You have a duty to ask for copies of your documents. You have a duty to review the documents and make sure the information is correct. If you fail to do that, no one is feeling sorry for you. You are going to be held accountable. And this is where people are going ahead and they get a link to do certain things. I had a client who stated that every time he went to look for this quote unquote lawyer, it was in an office where the man would just appear with his laptop. Yeah, his name was not out on the door at the building. Yet still a man presented himself to be an attorney. You have to be very careful because the responsibility is going to fall on you. Yeah? I can't tell you any other way, but it is what it is. That is going to be your responsibility. And in fact, you will need a waiver. This looking an excuse or trying to cast blame, it's not going to work. Yeah? If you know the truth, you can't expect to lie and think that anyone is gonna feel sorry for you. Yeah? This misrepresentation must be made to an immigration officer, right? Or to immigration itself by the documents. So you providing fake documents in your application, be very careful. What I find a lot is that landlords are being contacted. And this is why I can't understand people not living good with their landlord. Or if you're at a place, your landlord who lives there is going to get questioned. And people are engaging in certain things. When they come, they have the pictures of everyone. That's why you have to submit 2 passport size pictures, because those pictures in an investigation are shown to your neighbors, they are shown to the landlord, and if the person does not live there, guess what happens? Now it is that you have a fraud determination. And that's, I'll tell you this, I had 2 clients who came to me who were subject to that. And when I tell you the office had to work to prove that these people were in fact in a legitimate marriage, yeah, it's a lot of work. Put your documents right. Watch what you are stating on the applications. I don't really rely on neighbors, but immigration does. I can tell you now, when I grew up in Jamaica on the street, I knew all my neighbors. And oftentimes if they had kids, I would have been in their home. Because you live on the road, you basically know each child that's there. Either you're going to school with them or, during the holidays, you're playing on the streets. It's just a camaraderie. We're kids. So for me not to know a neighbor in the island, that's ridiculous. Here, I cannot. If I was supposed to see my neighbors out I would not know who they are. This is a place, it's not a place where you mix that much. My brother is different. He'll know everybody. Me, no. But this is where immigration will speak to your neighbors. And you'd be surprised how your neighbors know information on you. Me, I couldn't tell you anything. Me leave early, me come home late, me don't know them. Sorry. But sometimes people know you more than you would even know them. Yeah, me mind my business. Me don't look left, me don't look right. Me just a cut and go through. But not everybody lives like that, especially if they're home and they have a lot of time on their hands. Yeah, you'd be surprised how people will know you in an immigration application if they're coming for an investigation, especially if they suspect fraud. Your marriage is going to be an issue, and whether or not you're living at the place is an issue. Yeah, can understand how tenants won't pay their rent, because this is where your landlord can get really wicked and say you don't live there. Yeah, just to destroy your life, because you're destroying theirs by not paying their mortgage, because you can cause them to end up in foreclosure. All right, it is now 10:04. We have come to the end of the program. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget, if you wish to join us at 11 o'clock, you may do so to make an appointment during the week. The telephone number to call is 718-502-9137. Have a blessed and safe Sunday.